Alright, Section 119, Response Action Contractor, Liability Response Action Contractor. Response Action Contractor, person with the response action cover the risk of the aim with the relief of the threat and relief of the hazard and pollutant with contamination vessel facility shall not be liable under the federal law of the aim person injury of the damage of the expense of the other liability incurred, but not limited to the claim identification contribution claim of the third party death of the personal injury illness of law for the damage of the property of the economic law for the with the result of the scope of the relief of the threat and relief of the negligence etc. Paragraph 1 shall not apply with the case of the relief of the scope of the conduct of the response of the contract negligent, gross negligent with the constitute and initial misconduct. Effect of the warranties employer liability and subject to the effect of the liability and of the person of the warranty with the federal state with the common law nothing with the subsection the effect of the liability with the employer who with the response to the action contractor to employ such employer under the provision of law including the provision of any law relating to work compensation. Our government employee with the state employee with the employee of the public subdivision provided the serve the relationship with the response action with the scope of the authority of the government employee with the job of the same exemption liability subject to the other provisions of section provided with the response of the subject contractor under the section stated provision liability of other person's defense provided in section 17B3 shall not be available to the potential responsible party with associate respect to aim of the cause of the damage of the act of omission response to action with the contractor shall be provided in section A4 of the proceedings said nothing in the section shall affect the liability of the act under federal state law with the aim of the person of the response to action contractor. Burden or plaintiff, nothing in the section shall have the plaintiff burdens establishing liability of the title and identification in general of the person may agree with the head of the harmfulness and identifying any of the response contractor may be the requirements of the subsection against the liability, including the action with the expense of the litigation segment of the negligence arising with the contractor performance of carrying out the response to action, the activities under the title, unless the liability cover the conducting contractor was grossly negligent, constituted initial misconduct. Applicability. The subsection shall apply with respect to the response action carried out in the written agreement of the President Federal Agency, state with the political subdivision entering the contract cooperative agreement in accordance with section 104D1 of the title, any potential responsible party carrying out the agreement in section 122 relating to settlements for the section 106 relating to payment. So the funding, the sections should not be subject to the section 1301, 1341 of Title 31 United States Code, or section 3732 of the revised statutes, or section 3 of the Superintendent Fund Reauthorization Act of 1986 for the purposes of 111 and from out extended with the pursuant of the subsection and implication of the response to action operative with except for the respect of federally owned and operative this facility should be constructed the governmental the response cover the curb of the pursuant 104 the sufficient fund of this unable to have the substance Superfund established in subchapter 8 of the chapter 98 from the revenue to make the payments of the presumed in the invocation of the funds repealed, but the authorized may be appropriated to fund the is necessary to become such a payment for requirements of the identification agreement that may be provided the subsection of the president to determine that each of the following requirements are met with the liability covered in the identification agreement the next but not covered in insurance or insurance at the affair of the reasonable price of the contractor at the time of the contractor enters the contractor will provide the response action adequate ensure the source of the liability not eligible available at the time of response action contract is entered into. The response action contract must be diligent after the obtainment of the insurance cover for the non-federal source of the source for liability and give it the response action contractor covering with more than one facility. The response action contractor continue with much over the stuff of the diligent effort for the contractor begin the work under the contract of new facility. Limitation liability will cover the identification of the subsection and apply with the response action contractor limited ability with the result of the release of the hazardous substance pollutant contamination that does arrive at the body response activity deductible limited and to identification under the subsection and the deductible should be for the limits about the identification made available to contract the potential responsible parties demonstrate decision of them identifying the deciding whether they enter the identification agreement with the response action contractor carrying out the written contract agreement with the potential responsible party president to show the demonstrate the amount of the potential response party to identify the contractor president may enter the stuff of the identification agreement only with the president to determine the amount of the identification when they inadequate to cover the responsible potential liability with the contractor arising contractor negligence performing the contract agreement the such of the party president shall make with the determination president sense of the respect of the amount of the adequacy of the amount with the taken into the account of the total and net assets resource potential responsible party with respect to the facility at the time of the determination. Condition the president may claim with the under identification the referred to the call of the amount with the determined may cover the only if the contractor is off the administrator of the judicial common law facility the identification against the potential responsible party for the cleanup of the facility with respect to the liability contract tracking arising of the contractor's negligent performance of the contractor agreement with such parties such identification agreement shall require the contractor pay in it. Deductible establishment of paragraph B with the contractor may recover the amount with the potential responsible party for the identification of the agreement. The RCRA facility with no owner of the facility with the regulated with the Solid Waste Disposal Act may be identified in the subsection respect with the facility. The response retained by a hired person retained with the hired person describes the E2B shall be the eligible identification under the sex selection only if the president specially approved of the retaining of the hiring of the such person. Costs could recover the purpose of the section 107 for the amount of the pursuant of the subsection identification of the name of the person responsible to the action contractor of the respect of any release, threat, and relief that should consider the cop of the response and curb of the United States government with the respect of the relief regulations. The president shall promulgate the regulate with the carry out of the provisions subsection before the promulgation of regulation of the proper program, the President shall develop and carry out the section development of such guidelines, include with the responsibility, opportunity, public comment. Alright, study. The Comptroller General should conduct with the side of the fiscal year with September 30th, 1989, the pro-application for the subsection include the whether the application agreement of the subsection are being used and the number of the claim with the field under the section of the agreement of the need with the section of the Comptroller General shall report the finding with the side of the Congress no later than September 30th, 1989. Exemption. The exemption provided in the subsection A of the authority of the President. Indemnification under the subsection C not apply with any of the person covered in provision paragraph 1, 2, 3, and 4 in section 107A with respect to the relief of the threat and relief of the concern with the of the person covered so the provisions so even if such the person is not carried out in the action referred in subsection E with the section E the definition for the purpose of this action response action contract. The response action contract means any written contract agreement that entered in the response contract is defined with the paragraph that do A with the subsection of the President of the Federal Agency State Public Subdivision entered into the contract with the cooperative agreement in accordance with section 104D1 of the Act. Any potential responsible party carrying out the agreement under section 106 and 122 provide any remedial action under the Act with the facility listing with the national priority lift any with the removal of the under the Act with respect to the relief of the threat and relief of the hazard is substance pollutant and contamination facility with the provided evaluation planning and engineering surveying mapping design construction equipment and ancillary services with the area of the facility. Response and action contract determine the contractor mean with any of the person entered for the response action contract with respect to the relief, the threat, and relief of the hazard substance, pollutant, contamination facility carrying out with the such for the contract person, Paul, notify non-profit entity with the conduct of the field demonstration pursuant to section 311B. The recipient grant with include the sub grant under section 126 with the training, the education of the workers who are made engaged in the activities related to the hazard waste removal. The Contamination Emergency Response Action of the Act under this Act. Any person retained with a hired in person with the subparagraph A, the providing with the relating with the response action, any security with the October 16, 1990, provided the bid performance of the bond with the response action contractor begins activities of the to meet the obligations such as the bond and only connection with such activity obligations. Alright, 3. Insurance of the term. Insurance of the means of the liability. Insurance of the available the responsible period determined by the person which of the made available at the time of the contractor and for the response to action of the contractor perform response action. Competition response action, contractor, subcontractor, management, construction, management, architectural engineer, survey, management, related with the and in accordance with the Title 9 Federal Property Administration Service Act of the 1949 Federal Selection procedures apply with the appropriate contract to negotiate the federal government agencies involved with carrying out the act of the procedure shall be filed with the response action contractor, subcontractor, surety bonds. If the act of the August 24th, 1935, commonly referred to as the Miller Act surety bonds are required with any of the direct federal procurement, any of the response action contracts that are not waived in pursuant to the Act of the April 29th, 1941, they shall be issued in accordance with the Act of the August 24th, 1935. If under applicable federal law, surety bound with the required with the federal procurement to respond with the action, contracting on no right action shall occur with the performance bond, but except for the response action contract with the use of the person of the obligated name in the bond of the under applicable federal law, surety bound with the required with any of the direction federal procurement. Any response to the action contract unless otherwise provided by the procuring of the agency of the bond, then with the default of the surety liability performance bond shall be only with the completion of the contract work in accordance with the plan with the specification left over the balance fund for the remaining of the pay of the under contract of the minimum up to the minimum sum of the bond of the surety that shall no event with liability liable on the bonds identified with the compensation the obliged for the loss of liability arising personal injury, property damage, whether not caused by the breach of the bond contract. Nothing on the subsection the preempting, limiting, superseding, affecting, and applying to the modification of any state laws, regulation, requirement, rule for them, practice for the proceedings. Nothing in subsection should be constructed, affecting, applying, modifying, limiting, superseding, preempting any rights, authority, liabilities, demands, action, cause of the losses, judgments, claims, and statute limitation, obligation, federal, state, in which does not arise under the bond selection, not apply to bonds executed before October 17, 1990. All right, federal facilities, chapter 120.